the Hook Sports.
Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app.
Download now for free.
Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
All righty, let's get off and rolling as it is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. We're with you to discuss the future and the past. Tennessee loses to Missouri. Oh, just Georgia coming up this week. That shouldn't be difficult. Only the preeminent program in the nation. We'll discuss one freshman quarterback that you can read about on offthehooksports.com. Also, the blame pie. We'll discuss that. Tennessee's report card coming off the Missouri loss. It ain't great. And our Monday guest, Spencer Riley, will join us coming off a loss in the playoffs. And I hate that. Spencer, nice enough to give us some time. So he is the coach at Jeff County and former Tennessee center for the 1998 national championship team. So we'll break down how Tennessee played on Saturday in a loss again at Missouri. And also, we'll go through the SEC power rankings. Jimbo Fisher looking for another job despite a massive buyout. And the Vols now a 9.5-point underdog to Georgia. Is the upset realistic? So a lot to get to on the program. Caleb, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Happy Monday. I cannot believe I drank mayonnaise in my coffee for Will Levis, and he has let me down 2 weeks in a row. I cannot believe you guys actually believe that he is the future of this team. If you're a Titans fan, drives me crazy. Someone should teach him that DeAndre Hopkins, you should throw him the ball when he's open.
Probably. That would be a good idea. All right, here we go. We've got several things to get to. If you listen to our post-game show, you know that where we stand on some of these issues, but I want to get your thoughts as well, as it is time for today's tough question. It's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All righty, here we go. Some people have already weighed in on today's tough question as I posted it online as our poll question, and you can go ahead and pull it up now. We want your vote and want your comments for today's tough question, and it's pretty simple. I'll give you the results to this point. We go up at 9:30 each and every morning Eastern, so if you want to take part in the chat with me, I'll be there. And, of course, we go live each and every weekday at 10 a.m. Today's tough question is this. Would you feel better about Tennessee if Nico comes out and plays well, if he were to play and play well, or would you feel better about Joe Milton and a close loss to Georgia? So far, 67% of the people say a close loss to Georgia would be better than Nico coming out and playing well in a Bulldog loss. And you'll notice, Caleb, by design, I didn't throw out if it was a close loss or not, because playing Nico or playing any freshman is going to come with some stumbles, and that could occur against Georgia. So might be a one-sided loss, might be close. But the question is, and I'll ask you, Nico playing well in a Bulldog loss or a close loss to Georgia with Joe? Which would be the better sign for Tennessee's state of the program moving forward, Caleb?
Well, I mean, if you present that to me, I don't think it's a question. I disagree with the audience. It's Nico playing well in a loss. I think it's very clearly Nico playing well in a loss, particularly against a team as good as Georgia. The question is Nico going to play well against Georgia if you throw him out there? Or will he just get wrecked on the first play? And so I just think that given that fact and given where you've ridden with all year, I think you roll the dice still with, well, not roll the dice, actually. I think you still play it safe with Joe and let him finish out this year. And so that's where I'm at with it, because we'll get to this later in the show. I want to save this, but like Joe, I think does give you a better chance on Saturday. I do believe that.
I actually do too, but I would still play Nico in some shape, form, or fashion. Maybe not starting the game, but
maybe Georgia will be blowing him out so much that you will see Nico in the game.
Yeah, save mop-up duty for Gaston Moore at this point is my thoughts. The worst case scenario would be for Nico to go out there and get hurt in some sort of mop-up duty role that he's played all year, and that could happen. I mean, non-contact injuries happen all the time, so that would be the worst case scenario. But let's go to the message board, as some people have already weighed in. Travis, good morning to you. And that was a tough loss for Spencer. You're absolutely right. And Cody saying, I told you we'd lose to Mizzou without Haddon. Everybody loves Kamal Haddon now that he's hurt and out. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for me. We want to bring more people in on the program. Carlos on Facebook saying go Vols. We appreciate that. So more comments, more likes, more subscribes. We greatly appreciate that. The channel and the show and the site continue to grow, and we thank you. So let's get to some topics de jour coming off the Missouri loss. As again, today's tough question: would you feel better about Tennessee's program if Joe Milton goes out and plays the entire game in a close loss against Georgia, or Nico Iamaleava plays well? How did I do in the pronunciation there, Caleb?
Not great. It's Iamaleava.
Iamaleava. I was just kidding. Iamaleava. So a couple of other questions. Let's ask the Vols state of the program after the Mizzou loss. I can wipe away the Florida loss with center Cooper Mays out and a lack of depth because of a coaching change 2.5 years ago. I can wipe that away. I can wipe away the Alabama loss because you only played poorly for a half, and Alabama is still one of the preeminent programs in college football, and you're facing the best coach of this generation. So I can wipe that one away too as understandable losses. I have a lot of trouble wiping away not only the Mizzou loss, but the way Tennessee lost to Mizzou. That was a very disconcerting showing on Saturday.
So what stands out to you more, the way Tennessee lost to Mizzou this year or the way they lost to South Carolina last year?
Wow. That was brought up in our post-game show, Caleb. I almost look at them as like dogs and cats. I mean, those are two completely different games. And I still think, if not for the Jeremy Banks situation that week of missing a practice and getting into a tussle with Joe Milton, that Tennessee beats South Carolina. I know that sounds insane, as one-sided as it was, and I'm curious if you agree with that or not. I knew the weekend of the reason of the South Carolina debacle. I still don't understand this one. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel you on that. I could maybe explain this away. There was no Jeremy Banks factor in the game, and there was also we know this. We both, I think, believe that South Carolina may have had access to Tennessee's defensive signals in that game last year. And
because of the whole Michigan scenario, for those that haven't followed it, it's quite possible. Yes.
Yes, it is very possible. This one, I think what got me with this one that stood out the most was this is a little bit of panic time about the personnel of Tennessee after this year. They have issues on the offensive line specifically, and they have issues at linebacker specifically that they still have not addressed in year 3. Now, when I say they have issues on the offensive line, that's not to knock the players in there, but they can't go 10 deep right now. They can't deal with injuries. They're still making basic mistakes. There were 3 drives, as I talked about on Saturday, killed because of holding penalties that shouldn't have been committed. 2 3rd and 2s that were stuffed. Tennessee just lost the battle in the trenches on offense. And then on defense, we're underrating, and I'll get to this in the blame pie, but like that Keenan Peely injury was devastating because they haven't found somebody to replace him. And we're going to talk about that. But before we get there, we got to say, Dave, how bad is your program when you needed a transfer linebacker that much as a whole, and you still haven't fixed that issue? And I think that because of that, there is concern. I don't necessarily hate all the play calling. I thought Saturday was Josh Heupel's worst game as a play caller. You thought it was Florida. I had no problem with Florida. I thought Saturday was his worst by far as a play caller. But I
probably would go with Alabama. Are you talking about amongst the losses?
Yeah, amongst the losses.
I would go with Alabama as the worst as a play caller.
I'm still going to go with Missouri. But
That's fair.
I don't think it's panic time yet. I still say this. A generational quarterback can change everything, and this does go back to the Nico talk. I do think Tennessee has a generational quarterback of the future for next year. And a lot of coaches that have success, aka one who just got fired, have their success because a generational quarterback landed into their lap. I think Josh Heupel got a generational quarterback fall into his lap that we'll be seeing a lot of next year.
Yep. All right. So I ask you these 3 questions, and I want to pose it to the message board as well. Where are the Vols as a program after the Mizzou loss? I would say that they're the same place. They're middle of the pack in the SEC, the upper half for sure. I would say the upper third. However, I think, and I don't want to pick one guy specifically, but Elijah Herring, who you referenced the linebacker position, that guy should be playing defensive end. He doesn't have the hips to flip and get downfield, and he doesn't play sideline to sideline. So I think that would have been Arian Carter's position, or you would have slid Aaron Beasley back to the mic. So yeah, I understand the transition there, talking about injuries. So, but I do think you bring up a great question. The Vols as a program after the Mizzou loss, and that is, does Tennessee have a talent gap from the older guys to the younger guys? And I think they do. Is it panic time? You also ask. I would ask Tennessee's fans that on our message board. I say no. I don't believe that is the case at all. But I do think it's fair to say, I'm not as sky high on Josh Heupel as I was this time a year ago headed into the South Carolina game. So all of those, let me pose those questions to the message board, but let me pose it to you, Caleb. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm going to get to Heupel real quick too, because even though I questioned some play calling, we got to point this out, Dave, and I think it's time to bring this up. Heupel is not an in-game adjustments coach, and that the book is out on him on this. You know what his record is when trailing at halftime?
Not good.
1-10 as a head coach. 1-10. Now, again, a lot of those times are games where they're blowouts and he was going to lose. It didn't matter the first half or the second half, but you bring up the Alabama game, and at one point I see that I'm looking at the play calling just from, was this the right play at this time? But I'm not thinking about it from an adjustments overall schematic standpoint. I don't think Josh Heupel really changes up his game plan at halftime. Do you? I haven't seen that yet.
I think the idea is much like the option game, the running option, that should take care of itself. The safety should be somewhat caught in the middle, and it should take care of itself. So I don't think he's had to make a lot of halftime adjustments, but that should be a muscle you should flex and be able to work, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so you think, because I guess that's because Tennessee runs an offensive system, and there's a difference between running an offensive system and then just play calling play to play. Because Spurrier was call it play to play, right? It wasn't like some system that you teach of 3 plays or 4 plays. You're right. So I guess because you run a system, you're not necessarily going to change things up as much. But I mean, Urban Meyer ran a system, and I thought he was pretty darn good at in-game adjustments, wasn't he? Even though he was a system coach.
Yes, and I think that it's funny you bring up Spurrier. I think he was poor at halftime adjustments. I think he relied on his offense to find its way and the defensive talent to rise to the occasion. This from the message board. Does this team want Nico? The reaction to his first TD seemed overkill in a way that made me think that just a thought, not trying to start a rumor. So does this team want Nico? As far as the upperclassmen, I don't know. Caleb, you brought up a great point that could signal it's time for a youth movement. You could have a ton of guys leave before the bowl game and opt out. But the question is, as you head into the offseason, there needs to be a sense of optimism around this program when it comes to recruiting and more. I'm not sure that you can get that with a close loss by Joe Milton to Georgia, because Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's going to happen. So, Caleb, I think listen, I'm not telling Josh Heupel how to coach, okay? He's a better coach than me. But I'll tell you, if you want to win the PR battle, you're going to play Nico, right? There's no argument about that. If you want to win the PR battle, you play Nico. Just the PR battle.
I don't think so. Only because there's some people that want to see Milton finish out the season. You want to keep the team together. And also, again, this debate that we're having right now, Dave, what is it? The second to last week of November, the second to last week of the regular season. This debate that we're having right now, it's all going to be forgotten next summer. Whether or not he plays Nico won't matter when next summer comes and you're focused on Nico as the starter for 2024 anyway. And
I would disagree with that. If he goes out there against Georgia and let's say a split duty role and he's 16 of 22 for 185 yards against that defense, I think you're pretty excited.
Yeah, but I think you're excited about Nico, period. I don't think I'm excited about it. And by the way, guys, you're probably going to see him in the bowl game. Dave, I think the chances are less than 50% Joe Milton plays in the bowl game. I don't know what you do, but I think it's less than 50%. And as a matter of fact, for everybody that complains about opt-outs, I like older guys opting out if I'm a fan of a team. I want my favorite team's players opting out of the bowl because they're going to the draft anyway. What good does a bowl have?
All right, as good as his wins have been, his losses have definitely showed some major holes in his play calling. That on our message board talking about Josh Heupel. Smoky Mountain Red says, no panic here. We had lightning in a bottle last year that sent expectations to a crazy level with certain fans. This overall roster is still being built and getting better. I agree with what Smoky Mountain. Yeah, I do agree with what Smoky Mountain Red said. I don't think that a hiccup like Saturday, which was a major hiccup. Don't get me wrong. I mean, you still had the SEC East to play for theoretically. We know that wouldn't have been a possibility later in the day, but that's a pretty major hiccup. Roto22 saying the optimism is already here. We already have Nico and something to look forward to. Not seeing him play doesn't quite change that. That's exactly what Caleb says. And then Roto22 says, play Joe. Hit that like and subscribe button. Click the like button for me. Greatly appreciate that, as it's time for a little bit of blame pie. As my goodness gracious, there's plenty of blame to go around, I guess, other than the pilot who got the plane there. That was about all that happened from a positive manner in Tennessee's standpoint. But the blame pie, how do you throw it around, Caleb Calhoun, after Tennessee's frustrating, disappointing loss to Missouri?
So we mentioned him, and I hate to do this. I rewatched the game on Saturday, and I was blaming the front seven at first. I'm not blaming the front seven as a whole. I gave 35% of the blame to just Elijah Herring. The Brady Cook, Cody Schrader show had everything to do with Elijah Herring never, ever, ever being in the right position. Here's the thing. You brought it up. He's not athletic enough, which is already a problem. But on top of that, he's young, so he's going to make some mental mistakes. That's not a good combination for a middle linebacker when you're playing on offense like this. So it showed. No,
I don't want to rip on one guy that's playing, I believe, out of position. I think that guy needs to be a defensive end tomorrow or today or whenever you're watching.
Linebacker. That's the issue, though.
Well, no, I know they can't, but I know they don't have another dude. But if everything were perfect, that guy's playing defensive end, right?
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And we don't know if he can play defensive end, but he's got a better shot there than he does at linebacker.
Got a better shot at punter than he does at linebacker. All right. Where else do we go blame pie-wise?
Another 35% goes to the run blockers, just run blocking. I told you the 2 third downs that were stopped because you should be able to get those 3rd and 1s if you're Tennessee. And that includes offensive linemen and tight ends, everybody who does run blocking. Then you had 3 drives killed, Dave, due to holding penalties. One in which Tennessee got to the 6. Another one where they were moving the ball, but then, look, Heupel's offense doesn't. Joe Milton is not Hendon Hooker where, you know this, one big difference. When you're playing behind the sticks, Joe Milton can't really do much once he's behind the sticks. You agree with that? Like,
yes.
You got to be able to get the 2nd and shorts and 3rd and shorts and things like that. And so the holding penalties just absolutely obliterated Tennessee on Saturday.
Nope, totally agree. And so that wraps up the blame pod. We divvied out all the blame.
3 more to go, just real quick. Offensive backfield, and that's everybody. Joe Milton and Dylan Sampson, that fumble. Jalen Wright, the fumble. The bad pitch on the option. They got to get 15% because that was bad. Another 10%. One more player on David you got to call out. Wesley Walker. Terrible with containment. The safety is a crucial part of containment in an offense like Missouri's where you have that zone read. Wesley Walker was always out of position. He had a busted coverage, too, that allowed for that deep pass to open the 3rd quarter. Big blame on him. And then I'm going to throw 5% on play calling. I think play calling was a really big atrocity over the weekend.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. Report card, as is on offthehooksports.com. I got quarterbacks at a C+. Running backs, an F. And I have trouble arguing with you. I mean, I know that Jalen Wright got kind of banged up early in the game, and they had to put Dylan Sampson in, but Wright then had the fumble. I have trouble arguing with that at all. Wide receivers, an A-. Let me get
the bright spot
offense
of the game.
Yeah, let me get the offense in here. I want to get your thoughts on Dante Thornton. Tight end, D+. Offensive line, D-. Now, we had a question on the message board, Dante Thornton, any news on his injury? Not as of now, but we will let you know as soon as we know. But the rest of the group, I mean, just wasn't good. But let me get your thoughts on Dante Thornton. Did you see enough of him adjust to that football and make a fantastic catch while, by the way, his leg was getting twisted underneath him to say, Dante Thornton, I've changed my opinion. He can be a major contributor for the Vols in 2024. Did you see enough?
Yes, I saw enough.
I thought you'd say no. I did too.
No.
I thought like that guy was thrown into this situation. Physically, he probably wasn't ready. And I think he can be a contributor next year. I really do.
And he was hurt more than because Josh Heupel doesn't do us any favors by not giving us injury reports. So we didn't know how injured he was at the beginning of the year. I think he wasn't fighting for balls because why would you fight for balls if you could re-injure yourself long term? Nobody with a brain is going to do that. That's like a quarterback who has a hurt leg. That's like if Aaron Rodgers gets back in the game somehow this year and decides not to slide on a scramble. That's just stupid.
It's on offthehooksports.com. The defense, edge rusher, D+, linebacker, F. No argument there. We talked about Elijah Herring. Defensive back, C. Kicking game, C-. The return game gets a D. But as far as the defense, without saying Elijah Herring's name, what was the biggest problem with Tennessee's defense on Saturday?
Well, yes, I already mentioned Elijah Herring and Wesley Walker.
No, you said his name.
Sorry. No. Okay, but that's not who I'm going. The other part that we have to talk about is, the edge rushers racked up some stats. James Pierce got a sack. Tyler Barron helped on a tackle for a loss. Joshua Josephs did too. But sacks and tackles for a loss were not what you needed in this game. It's Dave's favorite word, guys. It was gap integrity, and the edge rushers did not stay home when plays broke outside. Which, in case you didn't notice, guys, I gave the defensive tackles a B+ because guess what? What can defensive tackles do other than push things up the middle? I thought Tennessee got to push up the middle, Dave. Am I crazy for that? Or would I rewatch it? They got their push up the middle.
No, they got to push, and Omar Norman Lott played well. You had him actually as number 2 on our Torchbearers, which I want to get to. No, I thought he played incredibly well. I would have had Omar Norman Lott number 1. You had Jackson Ross number 1, followed by Norman Lott, Dante Thornton at number 3, Jalen McCullough number 4, Joe Milton number 5. Why were those the Torchbearers, sir?
When in a game like this, you have to come down to who made the big plays. Joe Milton, you can say what you want about him not doing the right reads, but can we at least give him credit? He threw the ball well in the game. Joe Milton did throw the ball well throughout the game, honestly. And so I'm going to give him his props for that. Jalen McCullough, I mean, he had the interception on the first drive. The way the way that Missouri worked the passing game, most of those yards were to Cody Schrader out of the flat. You can't blame the secondary for that, can you?
No.
Yeah, and so I gave Jalen McCullough some. Sorry,
I don't want to pile on, but 9 times out of 10, that responsibility is the Mike Backer, which is Elijah Herring. I feel like this is becoming the Elijah Herring bashing show.
Well, and the other 10th time, it is on the free safety, Wesley Walker at that point, who was out of position himself a lot of times. But outside of Wesley Walker, I thought the secondary was fine, and Jalen McCullough was great. Dante Thornton, if Dante Thornton's in, he had one throw to him and made an amazing catch and gave Tennessee a lead. That's fine with me. Omar Norman Lott, 2 sacks, and punter U is back, baby. Jackson Ross. And
yeah. And then somebody said Smoky Mountain Red on our message board. Bus driver for Torchbearer Award. Would you give the bus driver an award?
I don't know how quickly he got them to the game.
Yeah, we don't know what time they got there. They could have been late for that matter. So Spencer Riley will join us. Those are our Torchbearer Awards. You can follow the Vols at offthehooksports.com. So all this being said, can Tennessee beat Georgia? Can, not will. Let me ask you that question, Caleb. And it's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Best prices, best service in the biz. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Can they beat Georgia with all that we have discussed?
Well, I will save that for when we talk about it in the next segment because I got some thoughts.
All right, I like it. Spencer Riley is going to join us next. Great tease. Portions of the program brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Look at me. I can see, and it's pretty awesome without contacts or without glasses. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn does LASIK, does cataract surgery, and make sure that you absolutely have local eye coverage. That is all about you. That's Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. In 2 minutes, we are joined by Spencer Riley, former Tennessee center, a VFL, and he'll give us his coaching breakdown and his thoughts on what happened over the weekend. Spencer Riley up next. Hang with me. 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare!
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show.
Who?
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, back at it. Welcome to the program. We're joined by a very special guest. It is Spencer Riley, VFL, and he is nice enough to join us after. Hey, Spencer, how you, buddy?
Oh, great. It's a great Monday. I'm lying.
Yeah.
It is what it is. You know what I mean? Season's over with. Lost a tough one Friday night. And, you know what I mean? Tennessee took it on the face Saturday. So it wasn't a very good day for my football programs I enjoy watching.
No. And tell us about the playoff loss on Friday. Hated to see that. And, we were rooting for you.
Man. It was a big time football game. It was a physical football game. It's what 2 really good 6A programs should be about. And you know what I mean. Our guys competed really hard. We missed a field goal to tie it there with less than a minute less than maybe 2 minutes to go in the game. And you know what I mean. Actually got the ball back with 3 seconds left and had a chance to heave it in the end zone and. They intercepted at the end of the game to close it out. So, but you know what I mean, we had our opportunities. When you're not very good on third down offensively, we weren't Friday night, and they were, and that was the difference of the ball game.
Well, as far as the difference in the ball game with Tennessee and Mizzou, it wasn't that close. That was evident by the score. Spencer, I'm curious as a coach. I remember Philip Fulmer used to say pixie dust, and this might have been after your time, but he said if a coach could take pixie dust and sprinkle it on his team every single game, they would be fantastic. But sometimes you show up, sometimes things don't go your way. As a coach, what's it like when on a day when everything seems to go against you, which it did for the Vols on Saturday?
Well, you're trying to find something to make a positive out of it first and foremost. it's hard to find a positive in the outcome that they had on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. You know what I mean? I think that from the get go, it was, hey, miss some throws here, had a chance, you know what I mean, make some big plays, and we just didn't do it. Had too many little nagging injuries during the ball game, take people out of the game for a couple plays, series here. So I mean, it was not. It's not very easy when you're a football coach and you're trying to figure out, hey, what can we do to get these kids a little bit more motivated? Trying to figure out how to put some pieces together, get a stop, get a score. You know what I mean? If you can get a stop and a score, and then you get another score, you got a chance to correct some of that momentum for sure. Y'all hear me?
Sorry, I had my mic muted for a second by accident.
Oh, the old COVID mic muted thing. What are we doing, Caleb?
Yeah, I apologize. I know, Spencer. I've been at this for a while now, and I still look as lost as some.
Buddy, I am as lost. When you asked me to do something on here, I'm like, nah, I don't know. Just say, hey, send me the link.
I look as lost as Jimbo Fisher did as an experienced coach. Okay, sorry.
Zingers.
You called it, Spencer, last week, or you've been calling it actually for 3 weeks now, and I wanted to give you some props because you kept lamenting the penalties. I counted 3 drives that Tennessee was moving the ball well that all got killed because of a stupid holding penalty on Saturday that they shouldn't have committed. And then I counted.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Sorry.
Penalties kill you, man. Period. He'll kill drives. They kill it all. You know what I mean? They'll let them convert on a third down. You know what I mean? They're not good. Those frustrate you more as a coach than they do anything, because I mean, you don't have to have some of those. You know, holding penalties are going to happen, right? It seems like they happen more and more frequently on Tennessee than they do everybody else. I understand that, and I see the frustration, and you know what I mean. At that point in time, you just want to get off the field or convert a third down to extend a drive, right? Am I right? They had my numbers. They had 4 plays or 2 minutes of offense in the first half or in the first quarter. Is that right? They had it. Missouri had it forever in the first quarter.
Well, you know, there's a conspiracy theory out there now. I don't know if you guys saw this over the weekend that because of the tempo Josh Heupel runs, the officials have a conspiracy to try to keep the offense off the field so they don't have to get tired having to run with the offense the whole time to keep up.
Get in better shape is what I'd tell them.
That's right. Spencer, one of the things that you did mention kind of in passing there, it does seem like the officiating, I hate blaming any game on officials, but it does seem like the officiating has been rather one-sided in Tennessee games. You place anything on that, or is that just bad luck, or what?
I mean, I think that at the end of the day, everybody's human. You know what I mean? There's a human element to being an official. There's a human element to being a player. Look, offensive linemen are going to hold. If they're not doing their job. So, I mean, the question is, are you going to get caught? Is it evident enough? Are we doing a good job? Are we doing a good enough job of teaching them how to hold so we don't get penalties? I mean, I'll just be honest with you. We spend a lot of time here at Jefferson County High School learning how to hold. You know what I mean? Because if you hold with inside the framework, it's not holding. As soon as your hands get outside the framework, it's a hold. And that's the thing that you got to understand is, and officials will tell you, a hold not unless you get your hands outside the framework of the body. Well, a lot of the times the hand work, their hand placement is outside the body when you go back and watch it for a Tennessee hold. It's because they don't get their hands in the right spot and they don't get their feet moving in the right direction in a timely manner. And that's why you get holding calls.
No. Very true. Portions of the program brought to you by Herald Group Security Solutions, leadership experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, making your children safer one school at a time. If you're a private school, especially, go to your school administrator and say Herald Group Security Solutions. How about your workplace? Herald Group Security Solutions can provide the security by former service members who are also highly trained individuals. We're going to get them in public schools eventually to avoid the tragedies that have been a part of our country for far too long. Joined by Spencer Riley. Again, Herald Group Security Solutions, heraldgrp.com. Go to your administrator and say, Herald Group Security Solutions, make us safer. So I'm curious, Spencer, did you guys ever care about the line? Did it ever get your attention? You guys were probably favored most of the time, but maybe not in that 98 Florida game. I don't recall. But Tennessee comes out as a 10-point favorite, roughly 9.5 to 10 points underdog to Georgia. Does that get anybody's attention on Tennessee's football team heading into the week that you're a double-digit underdog, essentially?
Well, maybe it would tell me that, they don't think we're very good and they think it's going to be a blowout. So that's what it'd tell me. So it kind of pissed me off a little bit. So, but everybody has their own style of how they get motivated, but I like to use a little external motivation every once in a while. I still do here at Jefferson High School as the head football coach for our kids, for me, for our coaches. So we just like to. It's one of those things that maybe somebody looks at it, maybe somebody doesn't. I definitely look at it.
Yes, Spencer, on that, you can live with you can understand Tennessee being a 9.5-point underdog to Georgia, even though they're at home. They just got blown out. Georgia just blew out Missouri. But you guys were a part of one of what I think are two of the worst lines in college football history, which was y'all were undefeated at number 1 and 5.5-point underdogs to Florida State in the national title game in 1998. I feel like that had to get under your skin, didn't it?
No respect. Still don't respect. People from Florida State still don't respect that win. So, they can enjoy themselves. So, and that loss and being the runners up for sure.
Yeah, and Peter Warwick can remind himself about how he got tackled by a punter.
100%.
Spencer, with this Tennessee football team, I moving towards Georgia, it has to get your attention when the preeminent program in the nation is coming your way, right? I mean, it is Tennessee, Georgia still, but if you don't have the best week at practice, you're not only not going to win, but you could get embarrassed. To me, that would get my attention too. I'd want to go out there and make sure that I put my best foot forward against the best program in the nation.
For sure. You don't want to be embarrassed by no means, because that hurts you in recruiting, it hurts you with your fan base. And you hear all the fans start bickering and complaining, oh, Josh Heupel, he's not a very good coach, and these coordinators not very good. Well, I don't know what they're talking about. Come on now. I think they're pretty good football coaches. I think at some point in time, those kids got to take some bit of responsibility for their play and their actions, especially as all this NIL money they're making.
Yep, that's fair. So let's get to that. And Tennessee's coaching staff, there was a change at the offensive coordinator position. I want to ask you, Spencer, how much confidence do you still have in this program? Portions of the program brought to you by the Hemp House Premier Hemp Dispensary Online, a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com, Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED to get 10% off. Hooked, get 10% off. So, Spencer, how much faith do you still have in this Tennessee football program and their coaching staff? Did Saturday change anything in your mind?
It's not changed anything in my mind about the coaching staff. I think they do a hell of a job. I think at some point in time, players got to make plays. And if you don't make plays, how can you win a football game? How can you be successful? Let's call it how it is. Me being a coach, I sit here and I try not to cross that line of stepping on people's toes, right? Because in a profession, you just don't want to ever do that to a coach or to a kid or to players. But, as a former BFL and a player at Tennessee, the expectations for me are high for them, but they're about where I thought they'd be anyways. I thought they overachieved last year. Let's call it how it is. At the end of the day, I think they're right on path to be getting back to where they need to be. They still don't have all the talent they need. Let's just be honest. They don't have enough. They don't have enough receivers. They don't have enough quality, physical, hard-nosed offensive linemen. And linebacker play, they ain't got enough of them. that can play and run.
You're right.
Yeah, we that was where I went over the weekend. As a matter of fact, I wanted to talk a little bit of X's and O's from the game with you, Spencer. I think a lot of people were blaming the defensive front seven as a unit for Cody Schrader having 200 yards rushing and 100 yards receiving, and Brady Cook torching them on the ground and throwing. And some of that fell on the defensive tackles, but I watched in the game, and isn't it true that sometimes players in a front seven can play well, but it's not noticed because other guys weren't able to do their job? Because I thought the defensive tackles got a really good push all game, but what good is a push if the linebackers aren't in position when they throw the ball to the running back in the flat, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, and we say it all the time. We'll give up a ball in the flats and rally to it as a coach. You know what I mean? But you got to make those tackles. You know what I mean? That's what I didn't see them doing. I didn't see them being very physical when they tackle somebody. You know what I mean? They weren't able. They got a lot of yak yards, yards after contact. So I mean, I didn't think that was very good on our part of game tackling.
No, I agree. Spencer, it means a lot for you to come on after a heartbreaking loss. We're rooting for your football team. A state title is just down the road. We believe that, and I greatly appreciate it. If you want to throw out some kudos to some of your guys, I know that it's heartbreaking for them, their season to be over. Who are some guys that you would mention?
Man, I think our running back, Amari Mills, had a phenomenal year. He's over a 3,000 career yard rusher. I want to say he was around 1,800 yards this year. Great job by him. Our linebackers, Braden Griffin, Hayden Churchwell, Emmett Newman, and Dallas Williamson. I mean, they played a great football game. Played great for us all year. All these guys are seniors who will be missed. And Bryson Letterman is a wide receiver and DB for us. Big time players for us, man. Going to miss those guys. Looking forward to having going to miss two of my offensive linemen, defensive linemen that we're going to be losing, in Mason Black and Griffin Townsend. And I know I'm missing out on some guys, man, because we got 19 seniors, the biggest class we've had since I've been here, that stuck it out and bought in and believe in what we do. And you know what I mean? They've changed this program. They've changed the culture. They've changed the expectation, not only for our players, but they changed it for the community and for us as a staff. And, you know what I mean? Being home is nice, but being home is hard. And I like that challenge each and every day when I step in this building as a leader of this football program and trying to continue raising that standard to where, hey, we're just not wanting to get to the second round. We want to be a championship contender club. So, and the lights go out on the party. So, you know what I mean? But
is that a Danny Don Meredith reference? Well,
yeah.
Spencer, I tell you what, we're rooting for you. It means a lot to have you on the program, and I want a shirt to support my.
Y'all send me your address so I can mail it to you.
Okay, I'll do that. And I got a book
coming
your way
too.
Well. Yeah, I will. I got a book coming your way.
Well. If you don't send it to me, I'm sorry, man. It's on him.
I totally agree.
I understand. Spencer, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Your prediction, and we're a ways out, but your prediction on Tennessee, Georgia, not a score prediction, not a breakdown of the game. Just let me ask you this, because I think this is a bit of a crossroad for some of Tennessee's players that are seniors, and there's not anything really left to play for other than pride. Do you think Tennessee shows up and plays Georgia tough on Saturday, or do you have concerns that maybe guys are thinking about the offseason or the NFL?
Well, if they don't want to play tough, they don't need to go out on the field. Let's just call it how it is. So,
yep.
You know what I mean? So I'm just being honest with you. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they got to go out and perform. And if they don't want to be out there and they don't want to go ahead and get on board, hey, and you're a senior, don't come out there.
Yep. I hear you. Great stuff, Spencer. We love you more than you know, and I will get that address. I'll get that address to you, and I'll get you a book as well.
Appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Y'all, we'll talk to you next week, okay?
Be good, man. Spencer Riley, the one, the only. By the way, you can subscribe now. Hit like and subscribe. Also, follow us on Facebook, Off the Hook Sports, Twitter, Off the Hook Sports, or OTH Sports Media, and the Dave Hooker. Instagram as well, as I don't even know how to use that. But download the app. We've got the app available. It's all right there for you. And we've got the book, Celebrate 98, which is right below. Support our sponsors. They are right below as well. And as far as the book, you can relive the greatest season in Tennessee football history right below. You can purchase now, get a personalized autographed copy for you. And with Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker. Love visiting with Spencer Riley. And he's absolutely right. If you're not willing to show up, then you just don't need to play. Don't just opt out of the bowl game, opt out of the Georgia game and the Vanderbilt game and say, I'm going to the NFL or I'm going to focus on the offseason, because there is nothing technically left to play for other than pride against I believe, the number one program in the nation right now. So if you don't have that pride to step up and play, then Caleb, just go ahead and think about the NFL or being whatever you need to be, a project developer or whatever, or engineer, whatever you've got planned for your offseason.
Well, if they have that approach, I mean, like, you would just throw that across all the maybe top 25 teams in college football. Should they all just throw in the towel the minute that they can't play for a playoff or an East? I mean, like,
amen.
It's, some of Tennessee's greatest wins happened at a time after there was nothing to play for. The 1991 Miracle at South Bend. That came in November. Tennessee had already lost out on the SEC title. They had lost to Florida and Alabama. That was Faxgate year, so they got cheated against Florida, but we can leave that alone. But they went. Andy Kelly was in a senior year, had nothing left to play for, but you know what? He had a win against Notre Dame in him because he had a lot of pride, and Carl Pickens and Aaron Hayden and those kids had a lot of pride in it. In there, I call them kids when they're significantly older than me, but they were kids at the time, and they had a lot of pride in what they were doing. I think of, there were a lot of times like that throughout Tennessee's history where they, you covered the 90s teams, Dave. How many times was the season over when they lost to Florida, but they still had a lot of pride to come up with some big wins in November and October. I think the 2000 team that was 8-4, the 2000 team was not happy with where they were given what the last 5 years had done. But what did they do after the 2-3 start? They went and beat South Carolina 17-14 in a really big game. Heck, the 1994 team that started 1-3. I mean, Philip Fulmer constantly, I'm sure he's told you this, Dave, he tells everybody that he talks to that's his favorite team that he ever coached, the 94 team.
Manning no, I'm with you. You have a lot to play for in pride in this program. Don't forget that this program, for a lot of these seniors, gave some NIL cash to, gave an education to. So could you go out there and play your absolute hardest against Georgia and lose by 10 points, which Vegas seems to think? Certainly you could. But that could help Tennessee in recruiting if you keep it close and down the line. So I think you've definitely, other than pride, got a debt to repay, even though there technically isn't anything to play for. And you're right. I mean, you don't want to go out there and get embarrassed. So we want you to hit the like and subscribe button, as we are going to get to right now. Can Tennessee upset Georgia? Let me just ask you that, Caleb. Can Tennessee upset Georgia? My thoughts are this. I think Tennessee, if they play their A-plus game, let's say first half Alabama. All right, there are instances I could pick from last season, but this is a different team. We know that now. First half Alabama, can Tennessee beat Georgia and Georgia plays fine, but not through the roof? Yes, at home. I don't think there's any question that Tennessee can beat Georgia. I have zero question in my mind, as a matter of fact. Caleb, what do you think? Not will, but can. I asked the message board this. Can Tennessee beat Georgia? And let me hear your take. There you go. What do you think, Caleb?
Let me break this down for you guys real quick. Yes, they can. I don't know if you know this, Dave, but Vegas had the line at 8.5 before last week. They moved it to 9.5. Now, you would think after Georgia just blew out a top 10 team by 35 and Tennessee got blown out by Missouri that they would move that line like 3 or 4 points, right? They didn't move. They moved it 1 point. They moved it just 1 point, meaning, and it was a one possession game last week. So meaning they still think there's a possibility. You taught me this, Dave, and I'm going to bring, I'm getting, guys, I've learned a lot from Dave, and I give him a lot of shout outs when I talk to him on the show, but then I use the information he gives me to win debates against him later. But,
very true.
So basically, one of the things you taught me was My whole life I watched football, and the idea of getting up or not getting up for games, I thought it was about that Saturday. But you are right. Whether or not you play well in a game because you were motivated has nothing to do with once kickoff starts. It has everything to do with how you practice the week leading up to it. And so the Georgia game, the Ole Miss game last week, let's think about this for a minute. Georgia, yes, they blew out Ole Miss, and everybody was ready to say this is how they look. You know they were practicing their guts off all week because they knew the East was in play to win. So even though they knew they had already clinched the East when Tennessee had lost, because of how they practiced all week, they still were ready to blow out Ole Miss in that game. Dave, I got to be honest. I think they poured so much into that. I think it's very possible Georgia takes this week off, even if they're going to visit Tennessee.
And they're a program that is known for doing that, so it's not a reach.
It's not a reach.
There was a point during Alabama's dynasty that they were pummeling everybody every single week, right? And for them to stumble, even have a close game, was like, whoa, what's going on? Georgia has close games 2 times out of 3. So
they do.
If you keep it close, who knows? This on the message board, can Tennessee beat Georgia on Saturday? Travis says, just hope we play with fire. I agree. If Tennessee plays with fire, then they're good to go. Orange Blood says, no, next question. Well, let's stick with this one for a little bit longer. And Orange Blood continues, 9.5 points. He is not excited. I bet Heupel's next paycheck, Orange Blood says, we can't beat them.
All right, Orange Blood,
and lastly, I'm just going to say, oh, come on, Orange Blood, don't be a boob. Tennessee will beat Georgia because Dolly Parton will be in attendance that we just heard. So
did you purposely say don't be a boob before you brought up Dolly Parton?
Absolutely not at all. I would never do that. I think Tennessee can. Am I crazy to think Tennessee can beat Georgia? And what would it mean for the program, Caleb, if they did?
It would be huge for the program. It would, again, we talked about it. I think 8-4 would be a mild disappointment, but 9-3 with the win over Georgia, like that's maybe hitting par. Would you say? Wouldn't you say that's about hitting par this year? 9-3 with the win over Georgia.
I would say, I think this one game, and I hate to, Caleb, I hate to say this, but I think this one game would make the season better than par. I think it would be a successful season, whereas I think if they lose to Georgia because of what's happened previously, we're going to be saying 9-3 is a disappointing. 8-4 would be a disappointing season. If you beat Georgia, I think you say it's a very successful season and a step in the right direction. In fact,
yeah. And it's you mentioned something earlier, and I kind of agree because of the NIL and scholarships, the players owe a debt to the program. If you're Tennessee players, you owe a debt to yourself to play this game well, right? This is not, Dave and I are going to be fine covering you next week if you win or lose. We're good, okay? It's up to you. You owe a debt to yourself to try to win this game and play for pride. And no, I totally agree. It says a lot of good things about the program long term. And again, Tennessee hasn't lost at home in 2 years. They haven't lost at home in 2 years. Georgia has been playing down to opponents. I have not seen Georgia yet get up for 2 weeks back to back. Have you?
No, not a year and a half. Well, I guess we could say some of the college football playoff, but they were flat in the semi last year.
They were flat against Ohio State.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, they weren't. Ohio State was actually on their level talent wise, to be fair. So that was a really good game.
Yeah. Ed says it will save the season. I think it's that strong. Now, let me ask you this, Caleb. A couple of yes or no questions. So you think Tennessee can beat Georgia? Do you think Joe Milton, Tennessee's quarterback, is the key player in this game?
Yes. And I think Joe Milton himself has more to play for than anybody. If Joe Milton comes out and balls out, what does that do for his draft stock? He's got that to play for. If you can generate headlines in a big November game, that changes. Remember this? Now, Joe Milton's not winning the Heisman, not even close, but Johnny Manziel won the Heisman because of the first half against Alabama in 2012, right? That alone was why he won the Heisman. And if you're Joe Milton and you can have that type of performance against Georgia, what will that do for you?
No, I agree. Smoky Mountain Red saying long shot, but imagine Nico leading the team to a win. I don't know that that's a long shot.
Well,
I really firmly believe when you see Nico play in real time in a game that matters, you're going to see a guy who has another level of ability than Joe Milton. And I'm not knocking Joe. Okay. I just believe that he is, based off what I've been told, going to be that good.
Well, so Dave, you tell me this. Now I've watched college for a while, and I would say it somewhat is like this, but I don't think it's the same way as the NFL. In college, does a change in quarterback that a team hasn't prepared for, does that give you the same level of advantage that it does in the NFL? Where, like, for an NFL quarterback, 2 games, they can
like
play
the guy that comes in the middle of the third quarter because the starter got hurt and he lights up the defense, and for a couple of weeks he's good, and then the defensive in the NFL figures him out. Yeah.
Yes.
No, certainly. I think you could run him out there and he has another level of ability. Listen, guys, I wanted things to happen right for Joe, and Caleb and I discussed this off the air. I didn't think from the get, and if you've been a part of what we're building here, you know this. I didn't think from the get that he was a championship quarterback. I didn't think he was as good as Hendon Hooker. I don't think it will prove out that he's as good as Nico. I've had my questions given accuracy and ability to process from the get, Caleb, and they've never been answered. Are they going to be answered Saturday? The odds would say no.
No, they would absolutely say no. You are right. I think it's partially just kind of giving him the chance to finish the year, win or lose, because I'll give you an example. And I think Joe Milton is Tennessee's Cole Stout. I've been saying that for a long time. Stout.
For those that don't know who Cole Stout is.
For those who don't know, Cole Stout was the quarterback between Taj Boyd and noted respecter of women, Deshaun Watson. And Cole Stout was a way to massage the transition to massage Deshaun Watson. Cole Stout was the quarterback in 2014 when Deshaun Watson was a highly touted freshman after Taj Boyd left. He had been there. Dabo Swinney gave him the year to start. It was his last year. He thought he deserved the year to start. Everybody in the world watching Clemson that year knew Deshaun Watson was better. Clemson finished 9-3 with Cole Stout, maybe 10-3. They let him start the bowl game, and he blew out Oklahoma. Ironically, the game that Josh Heupel got fired afterward, and from Oklahoma, and then they moved on to Deshaun Watson the year after. This to me was always that type of transition year. Hendon Hooker was Taj Boyd, and Nico Iamaleava was a more high character version of Deshaun Watson.
I always thought that Clemson should have played Deshaun Watson sooner. So I guess that I'm consistent, if nothing else.
But Dave, you are, but look what happened. The next 2 years, they went undefeated, played for the national title, and then won the national title. And so it's like, can you honestly say it would have gone any better for Clemson the next 2 years had they started Deshaun Watson early?
Well, maybe not, but I can tell you that I looked at Kelly Bryant the same way I looked at Joe Milton, and I said there's an awful lot of ability there, but he can't play.
But see, Kelly Bryant, you had you're right, and they went with
you had to protect Kelly Bryant like you have to protect Joe Milton. You can't run what you normally run because you're hamstrung by a player's, in this case, ability to throw accurate balls consistently and to process at a fast, high level. That is where you are with Joe Milton, and you have to protect that. That's why they threw so many screens earlier this season, the wide receiver screens, which is basically an extended run. I'd love to have the time to go back and count those as runs and add up how many times Tennessee, air quotes, ran the football as opposed to threw the football. And I bet it would be 65 to 70% if you count those screens as runs, as running the football. But Dave, that's not how this offense was supposed to be designed, Caleb. They've spent the whole season protecting Joe Milton.
Here's the difference between Milton and Kelly Bryant, and this is a big one. This is kind of like it works in Milton's favor. Milton's not going to be here next year. Kelly Bryant, if you stuck with him as a starter, you were stuck with him for 2 years at that point, and you could have lost it. You would have had to stick with him, and you might have lost the team determining when to go to Trevor Lawrence. So Dabo Swinney was able to ease him into the transfer portal and like, I got to go with Trevor Lawrence now, because if I don't go with him now, he might even transfer because he's not going to be starting next year. I'm going to be stuck with Kelly Bryant. At some point, you were going to have to, if Joe Milton were coming back next year, I would be like, yeah, you're going to have to bench him because at some point you're going to have to bench Nico in favor of Milton. So you might as well do it now and get it out of the way. But because you know he's not coming back next year, I think it makes it a little easier to just kind of, ease it through. And I do think Joe Milton right now gives them a better chance to beat Georgia on Saturday.
Okay, I would argue that point. But let me ask you the whole concept of being the kumbaya feel-good college football program of the nation the past year and a half. It would affect some of Tennessee's upperclassmen. Do you think that's the case? Portions of the program brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Looking for affordable game day jewelry? How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com. Please go to RickTerryJewelry.com. Support our sponsors right down there. So what about that concept? You could break up the kumbaya love that is Tennessee's football program. The culture will be destroyed. Tennessee may never recover if you bench Joe Milton. You can tell by the way I framed the question how I feel about it, Caleb, but how do you feel about it?
I feel like that's relevant only because, again, it matters that you don't have to worry about Joe Milton next year. Okay? If this was if starting Joe Milton was going to do long-term damage to your program, which would mean he would be starting next year too, yeah, I'd be like, I would have said pull the trigger after Austin Peay. I'd have pulled the trigger after Austin Peay and said go with Nico at that point. But because Joe Milton won't be on the program next year, it doesn't hurt you to finish the season with him and just keep the kumbaya together.
Yeah, to me, that would be zero factor because I think the guys know that Nico can play. I think that if he went out there and he kept Tennessee in the game against Georgia or went out there and balled out against Vanderbilt next week, played well in a bowl game, I think everybody'd be like, hey, that guy gives you the better chance to win. Who cares about the kumbaya stuff? And besides, this is big-time college football. You can transfer in a heartbeat. You make money.
You can't transfer when you're Joe Milton.
To me. Losing the team is the smallest of the factors in my mind.
I think not with look, Tennessee was so good in 2022 because of chemistry. They returned so much talent.
Agreed.
And that was a big advantage they had. So all I'm saying is that the kumbaya stuff is very, very near the bottom of the list and things that matters. But I will also say that it can be relevant when you already got nothing to play for. And Joe Milton's not going to be there next year. Again, if he was a fifth-year senior who could come back for a sixth year, I'd have a different tune. If he could have come back, again, I would have said bench him after Austin Peay and say, hey, Joe, thanks, but no thanks. You want to find another place to play your final year of football? I'll help you figure out where to transfer to, but you're not going to play here, period, end of story. But I don't think you do that when you don't have to worry about that when he won't be here next year and Nico will be here next year.
Amen. Sports Treasures carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook, Sports Treasures TN. That's Sports Treasures TN on Facebook. They send out daily updates. It's awesome. Sports Treasures. And I hope to drop by there. You can also pick up a copy there of Celebrate 98, the untold stories behind the Tennessee Vols 1998 National Championship game. You can pick them up there at Alumni Hall or Hound Dogs, and we'll have a special book signing that we're excited about. I'll tell you more about that. But again, Sports Treasures in North Knoxville, over 5 million sports treasures. They are awesome. Coming up, where does Tennessee fall in the power rankings? Did they drop because of the Missouri loss? Well, I would certainly think to some extent that they do, but we'll see how far with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Hang with me for 2 minutes. Hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed yet, we want you to do that because we're loaded up each and every day. Tomorrow will be John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. So where does Tennessee stand in the power rankings? Up next with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Hi, I'm Rick Terry, and we at Rick Terry Jewelry Designs pride ourselves in the highest quality craftsmanship from a family-owned business here in Knoxville for over 35 years. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we also take pride in being an affordable option for all your game day accessories, especially those fire opals. At Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, we want to be your jeweler every day and especially on game day. Go Vols!
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Who's this guy?
Hello, who is it?
The Dave Hooker Show,
Who?
a presentation of Off the Hook Sports,
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
But a lot of you could have used a cider after the game on Saturday. Well, I'm here to tell you how you can not only enjoy the cider, but a fantastic hat as well. Tennessee Cider Company, the original hard cider of the Smoky Mountains. Use the promo code HAT, that's HAT, to receive some free swag with your cider order. Available most anywhere in the United States. Support our sponsors. They're right below. Tennessee Cider Company, promo code HAT. Promo code HAT. SEC Power Rankings are live and up on offthehooksports.com. Check that out each and every week. Brought to you by Caleb Calhoun. And one thing we do want to touch base on, and that is Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher. So we'll get to that, but we look at top the rankings. Georgia number 1, no surprise. Alabama number 2, no surprise. Then you have number 3, Missouri over Ole Miss after Missouri beats Tennessee. Whoa, what? Is Missouri really the 3rd best team in the SEC, Caleb? Really?
Well, Ole Miss beat LSU 52-49, which is Ole Miss's best win. Missouri beat Tennessee 36-7 in an absolute obliteration. You got to give Missouri some credit for that. They played Georgia tight. Oh, they were a bad interception away from maybe even beating Georgia on the road a week ago. So, Dave, they're rolling right now. Your least favorite program in the SEC looks like the Gary Pinkel Missouri days in the 2013-2014 years.
Boy, that whole game looked like a fiasco disaster on Saturday. I mean, how did you notice how the M, they block it off so that you can't sit in the one end zone where
sense.
the white M is? What for Missouri? Well, that means that nobody wants those seats. They would pull that M up in a heartbeat and put seats there, but nobody wants to sit there. And I noticed that the stadium wasn't built north-south, that it was built going east-west, which means one side you're going into the sun, which is incredibly stupid. Just that whole program just needs to go away. All right, Ole Miss, number 4, LSU's number 5, Auburn, number 6, and then Tennessee at number 7. If Tennessee ends the season as the 7th best team in the nation, should Tennessee fans be disappointed? Or 7th best team in the conference.
I was going to say 7th best team in the nation. No, they shouldn't. But yes, if they end the season as the 7th best team in the conference, they should be disappointed. But the controversial one to many will be Auburn over Tennessee. But I mean, again, given how bad Tennessee played on a neutral field, maybe I was overreacting because I still think Tennessee would be favored over Auburn right now. But I mean, you can't ignore what happened over the weekend, can you? With how bad Tennessee played.
No, and now when I look at Tennessee and their program, I think they're more along who would you take as a program over them right now in the SEC? Georgia and Alabama for sure. I think everybody else is debatable given their head coaching situation.
I still would take LSU as a program long term, just
with
because
Brian
it's
Kelly.
LSU. Yeah, with Brian Kelly.
Yeah, more in-state talent. I can see that. Okay, so Texas A&M, by the way, comes in on this list of our SEC Power Rankings at number 8. If you're Texas A&M, are you interested in Josh Heupel? Because they've they've decided to jettison Jimbo Fisher, and he walks away with $78 million. Are you interested in Josh Heupel? That's the question I pose to you if you're Texas A&M.
Yes, but if you're Texas A&M, do you shoot your shot again? Do you think shooting their shot with Jimbo Fisher was the problem, or do you think it was just that they shot their shot on the wrong person? You know,
who do you shoot your shot with? That's
Belichick's about to get fired by the Patriots.
Yeah, and let me clarify. Caleb's talking about a splash hire where you win the press conference, which Texas A&M did with Jimbo Fisher. They were supposed to win 2 or 3 national titles under Jimbo Fisher. They won the press conference. That doesn't mean a lot in retrospect. So you're talking about a big name, an Urban Meyer, that type of guy. Or do you go with an up-and-comer that Tennessee has with Josh Heupel, or hired with Josh Heupel? I think he's a little bit more established right now than an up-and-comer. But when they hired him from Central Florida, he would have to be deemed as an up-and-comer. Well, I think if you're A&M, you have this massive buyout to pay. Now, money's not going to be a factor. They've got as much money at Texas A&M as they do anywhere in the nation. But I think I would try, instead of shooting my shot with an Urban Meyer or Bill Belichick if he gets fired at the Patriots, with a big monster name like Jimbo Fisher was, I think I'd do my proper research and find the best coach that is under 45 years old and try to grow with him for the next 10 years. That is the approach that I would take. And I would say this too, with Texas A&M, if I were their athletic director, here's how I would handle this. I would go to an outside search party, which a lot of people knock because they're like, oh, you should know it yourself. You should know what coach you want to hire. I would go with a search party because you're ahead of the game. You're going to be able to extend one of the first offers because you made a move in November instead of early December. And the other reason I would hire a search firm is there are a lot of voices inside that of athletic director or that athletic department, and that have money and they want to have their say. If I'm the athletic director, I want to say, this is who the coaching search recommended. And that's who I went with. I think if I'm the athletic director, I'm covering my own rear end a little bit as well. What about you, Caleb? Do you think they'll go for the splash hire? Do you think they'll go for a proven yet still potential unfulfilled coach like Josh Heupel? Or do you think they'll go with a young up-and-comer? There's kind of 3 levels. I think Josh Heupel fits the middle one. You?
I think it's the middle one, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. One, we've discussed, Dave, in an age of NIL, this Jimbo Fisher hire, this contract does not happen in an NIL era. You and I both agree, right? Because they're like, hey, save that money so we can buy some talent on our team. And if you're Texas A&M, they can buy a lot of talent. Here's why you go for the middle hire. Texas A&M, with the right coach, look at the roster. If everybody stays, they could win a national championship next year, couldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
If you get the right coach, they could win a national title next year. Look for the coach that's done great with the talent he's had. That is a Josh Heupel. That is a Mike Elko at 2. That is, if I'm Texas A&M, I'm on the phone with Lane Kiffin right now. I know that's crazy, but Lane Kiffin at A&M, I would have them winning a national championship next year if Lane Kiffin was at Texas A&M.
Okay,
I trust him that much as a coach.
Well, let me ask you this. Is Josh Heupel even on the list of top 5 coaches that they would call? Because I think Elko is going to be the guy that they target, who's been a defensive coordinator at A&M. So let's include him in the top 5, right? You'd be crazy not to have that on your list. Lane Kiffin's debatable because I think you get some baggage with Lane. But
who cares? You're Texas A&M.
I know he would be on my top 5. So this is our top 5, Caleb. This is not the real top 5. Is Josh Heupel, does he make the top 5 just off the top of your head?
Yeah, he does. I'll just go there. I'll go Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, Mike Elko, Dan Lanning, and that's just 4 I named right off the bat. Oh, and the guy at Michigan, Sharon Moore, who had just coached a heck of a game against Penn State as an interim head coach on Saturday. Michigan didn't start going to the college football playoff until Sharon Moore took over as offensive coordinator. That stands out to me in a big way. And he's a offensive line coach to become an offensive coordinator, which typically, Dave, you know this, former line coaches who are offensive coordinators, Philip Fulmer, they like to run a pro-style offense. I think Texas A&M is best running a pro-style offense with their talent. They don't have to run a gimmicky offense at all.
Here's the other thing that's scary about if they went the Lane Kiffin route. Lane Kiffin wants to pride himself in being the NIL guy, but Ole Miss doesn't have the money. So if he went to A&M, the money would not be an issue. I mean, Lane Kiffin to A&M could be scary, like for the next 10 years.
That would be very, very scary. Yes, Lane Kiffin to A&M, I'd have a couple of national. Look, people, you know when you know a college football fan is not smart, Dave? Can I just say this right off the bat? I'm going to accuse people in college. You know when you know you're not smart if you're a college football fan? When you think a program's history has anything to do with whether or not it has the resources to be successful. So if you use Texas A&M's history to prove that they can't win a championship, you're not a smart college football fan. I don't care about the history. I care about the resources and what they have now. They're in Texas. They got a top 5 NIL initiative. They got money out the wazoo. Dave, you and I know just because they haven't won doesn't mean they're not capable of winning, right? I mean, and Josh Pate, our guy, brought this up. He said, didn't people say the same thing about Georgia for 40 years before Kirby Smart? They're like, well, they can't win. And then Kirby Smart got there, and what did he do? 2 national titles. And
let me give you some stats as why they should call Josh Heupel, why he should be on their radar. The number of weeks in the top 15. Derek Dooley, 0 in 36 games. Highest ranked program, got to 23rd. Butch Jones, 6 weeks in the top 15. Highest ranked was number 9. That was out of 61 games. Jeremy Pruitt, 2 weeks in the top 15. Highest was 14th, and that was out of 35 games. Josh Heupel, 18 weeks in the top 15 amongst 35 games. The highest rank, number 1. So if you look at the previous 3 coaches, and absolutely, I do not want to see Josh Heupel leave. We got that on the message board. I think that would be horrendous. No, I do not want to see that. But if I'm A&M, as a matter of fact, the reason I'm making this argument is I believe so much in Josh Heupel still, despite some missteps along the way. He should be on A&M's top 5 list. He should be on A&M's or any top program's top 5 list. I don't think anything changes after Saturday. That's the point I was trying to drive home. Maybe I missed it. But Caleb, yes, I still think he's one of the best offensive minds in the game. I think he gets stubborn with personnel, but that's something that you hopefully grow through. So no question he should be on the top 5 list.
Yeah, he absolutely should. And the other thing that Texas A&M needs to be clear, here's a crazy thing I want to say, Dave, because you covered it for years. I have covered it to a lesser degree, but not as much as you have. Don't hire a guy for his ability to recruit. You're in an NIL age and being in Texas, you don't need a recruiter.
Well, even at Tennessee, I mean, the top 15 or so programs in the nation, you and I could go out there and get a top 25 class. The question is, can you get a top 5 class? And the only guys that have proven they can do that on a consistent basis have jobs that they're not leaving anytime soon. And I'm talking about the Nick Sabans of the world and the Kirby Smarts of the world, the Ryan Days of the world. So they're really not approachable. So you're right. Don't hire somebody based off their ability to recruit. I'll tell you what would be my number 1 criteria for any coach, that if I'm Texas A&M or Tennessee or whoever, that the number 1 criteria would be having a really good offensive mind. So I think that puts Josh Heupel ahead of the curve for a really good defensive-minded coach. Portions of the program brought to you by Don Self at State Farm. Customer service still matters. State Farm agent Don Self and his team take customer service seriously. For well over 40 years, they built their business and reputation on taking care of their customers in Collegedale and Ooltewah as part of the greater Chattanooga area. Don and his team pride themselves on making sure you and your family won't have any surprises at the time of your claim. That's Don Self, home and business, family as well. Your friendly neighborhood State Farm agent for the greater Chattanooga area, Don Self State Farm. So what would be the number 1 criteria on your list? If you're A&M or anybody else that's one of the best programs in the nation, top 15, and you're looking for a coach, mine is be a bright offensive mind. What would be your number 1 criteria?
You are going to die laughing when I tell you this, Dave. My number one criteria, I would call professors from the classes they took in college and ask how smart are they? Period in the story. Because I think that's the biggest. Yeah, one of my tests, you know what I would do? I just play them. I would play like 10 games against them in NCAA football and see how smart they are at actually like reading defenses and calling plays. And that would be pretty much where I'd go. I think intelligence means more than we so overlook it with head coaches. And so I'm just going to no, how good were you in class? Can you pass an IQ test? Okay. I mean, that's where I'm at with this. And I think that many coaches are now, to be fair, sometimes you can be a victim of your own smarts because you think you're so smart that you don't have to adjust for anything. I wonder if that was Jimbo Fisher. You could maybe tell me if you think he's just not smart or if you think he was so successful that he didn't feel like he ever had to adjust.
I think there are two different kinds of intelligence. I think there is just an IQ. Anybody can pass an IQ test or pass. Anybody can succeed or fail in an IQ test. I think there's something different with being able to process quickly. And I think that Joe Milton may score 150 on an IQ test. I don't know. But I think the process quickly is troublesome. I think the process quickly also has to be there for play callers. So I would want a guy that I know can process quickly and be able to get the play out. So that would be a monster factor for me. By the way, Zach Arnett fired at Mississippi State. Why? Because Texas A&M made a change. And much like Tennessee before the 2009 season, after the 2008 season, they want to get ahead of the curve. Remember, Lane Kiffin was flirting with Washington, which is why Tennessee fired Philip Fulmer in the middle of the season. We've got more teams on, if you can run down the rest of the teams on our power rankings. And then I want to say something about the passing of a friend of mine. So if you can give us the teams that you round out the SEC power rankings.
Yes, Zach Arnett fired. That was a firing game on Saturday because Texas A&M blew out Mississippi State. Interestingly enough, I don't know if Zach Arnett got a fair shake. He was in a difficult situation after the Mike Leach thing, but that's going to be interesting to see. So moving forward, so we have Texas A&M at 8, Kentucky at 9. Kentucky is Kentucky. They are as predictable as anything. By the way, Texas A&M, look at Mark Stoops. South Carolina at 10. They could get to a bowl game. They got Kentucky and Clemson at home to close out the year. Arkansas, number 11. I think Sam Pittman is the next guy to get the axe in the SEC. I don't know when, don't know how quickly, but I think Sam Pittman is going to be done soon. Florida at number 12. Billy Napier should get the axe, but he's not going to get the axe because people want to hold that recruiting class together for a year. Mississippi State at 13 and Vanderbilt at 14.
Yep, I really don't have any argument from that point forward. I would still I know this sounds crazy, but well, I can't even make that argument. How do you lose to Missouri like that?
I know. But real quick before, because I know you wanted to say something on Mike Hamilton, we got to get to the week 11 finishes. But guys, pay attention to the next month, though. Here's where Texas A&M's firing is a huge impact of Jimbo Fisher. There are a lot of players Tennessee wanted who might be entering the transfer portal very soon. And I encourage y'all to read Caleb Jaru's article on that. Is there a chance Walter Nolan comes home? Or do you think the NIL money is just going to keep him at Texas A&M no matter what, regardless of the coach?
I don't know. I don't think so. But, I mean, it's possible. I mean, you have to remember this NIL money that he could be getting. I don't know how much he's getting. But this NIL money could be enough to keep players that would otherwise transfer at their original school. So, I mean, I think that's a real thing that you have to factor in. As far as the what happened in college football as a whole, congratulations to Michigan, who's able to probably still utilize some of their cheating and sign stealing and get a big win with an interim head coach. Jim Harbaugh suspended for the rest of the season. They're trying to fight that in court. I still think Georgia is the best program in the nation. I think they're the best football team this year. I think you saw that against Ole Miss, who, after the Rebels made it a somewhat close game early, just hammered and took control of that game. I didn't know what Kirk Herbstreit and who was on with him, I can't remember his name all of a sudden, I didn't know what they were going to talk about for the second half. That was so one-sided. Oh, help me with he's really good. He used to host College Game Day for years.
Oh, Chris Fowler.
Yeah, Chris Fowler. I didn't know what they were going to talk about. I felt for them having done play-by-play before. So do you think after what you saw this weekend that Georgia, who Tennessee plays on Saturday, is the best football program / team in the nation?
I still have, if you just were to power rank it, I would probably have Georgia number 1, but I got to be honest, I was more impressed with Michigan's play on Saturday than Georgia's play. Because even though Georgia blew out Ole Miss, you and I know, Dave, that Michigan plays a different style of ball. They play that old school Big Ten style. It was. Did you watch the Michigan Penn State game at all? I don't know if you did.
I did.
It was 24-15. Let's be honest, it wasn't that close. Michigan absolutely beat the brakes off them. And I don't know if you know this. I don't think they threw a pass in the second half. They didn't throw a pass in the second half because they didn't respect Penn State's ability to stop them running the ball. And it didn't matter. When you can have your way with a program like that, and I know Penn State is like a tier below Michigan the same way Georgia is Ole Miss, but when you can have your way with a program like that in the second half, when your coach is suspended, you don't find out, by the way, until an hour before the game that he's not going to coach. Because remember, they had to do the injunction and the stay, and they didn't know. And you go out and beat Penn State on the road like that. I think Michigan, that was the most impressive win any team has had all year to me.
Yep, agree. Let's talk a little bit of recruiting now, if we can, after what happened over the weekend. And as you mentioned, offthehooksports.com, you can certainly check out some A&M players that Tennessee is interested in. And do you want to throw some of those out there, as the A&M change will certainly affect some young men's decision about where they go to college? As let's talk a little bit of recruiting here, and then I want to share a personal note. So who does Tennessee have a chance on now that A&M has made a move, you think, Caleb?
So there are some guys so Cameron McKell is one of the last remaining targets in the cycle. He was down to Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, Georgia, and Texas A&M. Texas A&M fires Jimbo Fisher. Tennessee, if they upset Georgia this weekend, could we say that maybe Tennessee has a chance with him?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Terry Bussey, a 5-star. He's an athlete. He was committed to A&M, but I mean, look, we're talking about a guy that you could easily flip now after what happened. He could play receiver or defensive back. DeBron Gatling is a 3-star. I don't know where he'll end up going, but the high title ones are Cameron McKell and Michael. I don't know if you pronounce how you pronounce his last name, and Terry Bussey, who's already committed to Texas A&M. Walter Nolan is the 5-star, and we don't know what's going to happen with him. And also Raymond Cottrell has already entered the transfer portal for Texas A&M.
Okay, so here we go. There's going to be a lot of A&M players to take advantage of as Tennessee moves forward, and there will be some transfers. Walter Nolan is the easiest to point to because he has ties and played at Powell High School, the home of the mighty Panthers, where I went to school. But it's not as if he grew up and was raised in East Tennessee, so I don't think there's a strong ties there. It's kind of like just a stopover, like a travel nurse. So I don't know that it's a huge tie to East Tennessee, but there is somewhat of a tie there. Powell High School head coach Matt Lowe should do some recruiting for the Vols. Didn't do much to get him to Tennessee in the first place, but we'll see if he can do something for Walter Nolan now. And wanted to take a second, Caleb, if I can, and it's been on the message board, and it was reported on Friday late, and that was Mike Hamilton's passing as a former athletic director for Tennessee, but much more a great individual who worked with several charities after his time at Tennessee and chose to get out of the athletic realm altogether. He helped and changed lives in several different ways. He adopted children from Africa that certainly he changed their lives forever. Can you imagine? And I think he was a great man. I don't really want to get into how he may have handled or mishandled some of the issues at Tennessee. I will say this, though. The move he made, I think we can agree, that will always be questioned was the move from Philip Fulmer to Lane Kiffin. If Lane Kiffin doesn't get the crack at Southern Cal, he may still be Tennessee's head coach. I think that move was aggressive. I think it should have been insured by a stronger buyout if Lane Kiffin decided to leave. I think it was less than $1 million, so that was nothing to Southern California and paying that. But that was an aggressive move, and some people are never going to like Mike Hamilton for what happened to Philip Fulmer and the way he was fired. But if you look at the facilities and what Tennessee has going on right now, I believe a lot of that is due to Mike Hamilton. But at the end of the day, don't judge him as just an athletic director. Judge him as a man that gave most of his life to charity work, a man that made that a priority in his own home. And personally, I can tell you that he was always a respectful person that I loved working with. And, that's sometimes it's better be judged as a person, Caleb, than as how you handle your job from 9 to 5.
Yeah, I always felt I had a lot of criticisms of some of the moves they made. You've enlightened me that some of those were not all his moves. They were people that took the power away from him to make those moves. But I think
hiring Derek Dooley was not his choice. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think Mike Hamilton tried to lead with integrity as best as he could. And I want to bring this up, and a lot of people don't know this, but I want to bring up a little bit of history real quick. When Mike Hamilton took over as athletic director, I believe it was in 2003. Dave, you may remember that was the same year the lottery scholarship was introduced in Tennessee. And I don't know if you remember why there was momentum behind that. Tennessee in the early 2000s, the academic program had collapsed. It was a really, really, really bad academic school at the turn of the century. And it was ranked the #1 party school, a lot of issues. You remember the academic fraud investigation, not just for the but for the football program, but the academics as a whole was terrible. Hamilton took a really gutsy stance to commit a lot more of the resources from the athletic department to help stabilize the academic program, which is why Tennessee is a borderline public Ivy now as a public school. It's not there yet, but he's really upped the qualifications for the college itself. That was Mike Hamilton. Now, a lot of fans were upset about that because when Mike Hamilton was forced to resign, I don't know if he was forced or if he did. I don't know everything that went into that. But when he did resign, when Dave Hart took over, Tennessee was very much behind on their reserves, and they were very depleted. Luckily for them, it didn't matter because the SEC network was coming. And by the way, don't think Mike Hamilton probably didn't have a role in making sure and checking out the revenue that would come from the SEC network before Dave Hart ever stepped into the role. Mm-hmm. But Mike Hamilton, the dramatic improvement in Tennessee academics from 2003 to when he resigned, that stands out because Mike Hamilton was really one of the first to commit some resources to help the academic department. And he was the first, by the way, athletic director to say Tennessee should be more than just a football school. Whatever you want to say about Doug Dickey, he didn't care about academics and he didn't care about any other sport. He wanted football and that was it. Am I right?
Yeah, they never would have had the golden years of Tennessee basketball with Bruce Pearl. I mean, that was a fantastic time. He was smart enough to know that you shouldn't get rid of the Lady Vols logo. He was a guy that loved Tennessee, even though he didn't come up through Tennessee. And I will tell you what, I am just incredibly saddened by his passing at just 60 years old. So rest in peace, sir. You're a fantastic man. And really at the end of the day, wouldn't we rather be a fantastic man than a fantastic worker? I certainly would.
He can live with himself. Before we go, I just wanted to run out my top 10 for you and you give me your thoughts on it if you disagree.
Mm-hmm. Lay it on me.
All right. Ohio State #1, Washington 2, Michigan 3, Georgia 4, Florida State 5, Oregon 6, Texas 7, Alabama 8, Louisville 9, Penn State 10.
I got no real argument with those.
I know you think Georgia's better, but they still don't have the resume of a Washington, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate that at all. I mean, I just think Georgia is the best football team right now in the nation.
Jeff Brom is the coach of the year at Louisville. What if Tennessee hired him in 2017 because they almost did? He's got Louisville at 9-1, and Also, watch out for that Oregon-Washington Pac-12 title collision course, guys.
There you go. There's nothing like that. All right, what else we got as we look back over the weekend?
Those are the main ones, yeah. So Oregon-Washington Pac-12 title collision course, and also Jeff Brom, Coach of the Year. Texas, here's the crazy part. Texas is staying ahead of Alabama. This is the last point I want to bring up. Alabama's better than Texas right now. You watch those two teams play, Alabama's the better team. And Jalen Milroe was the better quarterback than anybody on Texas. But if they both went out, you had to put Texas in the playoff over Alabama, right? Because they beat Alabama.
Yeah. Yeah. And, well, I'll tell you the one thing that stood out about that Alabama game to me is Jalen Milroe's decisiveness of when to run the football. I couldn't help but think if Joe Milton had that, this is a different year. Right? Like, I'm going to go. I'm going. You got to make that in a split second. I mean, I'm going. I'm not thinking about going. I'm going. And Jalen Milroe does that as well as anybody in the nation. When he decides to go, man, he is upfield. And Joe Milton has the ability to do that. And it's just frustrating that he doesn't choose to do so. All right. So
that's
Tuesday.
Actually the biggest advantage Nico has over Joe, by the way. Even though Joe's more faster, Nico doesn't hesitate. Did you notice that when he's in? He knows when to run.
Yeah. Process. How you process things.
CJ Stroud is rookie of the year because of that.
Yes. Should have started the season with Nico.
Oh my gosh.
Just telling you.
There goes Dave.
What? Okay, when he goes out there and balls out against Georgia, Vanderbilt, whoever they play in the bowl game or the first game next year, you're going to be like, Dad, blame it. Dave was right in August 2023.
Dave, you're just burned because Fulmer it worked for when you were covering Tennessee when Fulmer made the gutsy move to start Ainge and Schaefer over CJ Leak. But, you know.
I didn't think that was gutsy. I didn't think CJ Leak could play.
You would have started James Banks in 2003. I'm kidding.
Maybe. He is Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, offthehooksports.com. Click that like and subscribe button, but follow us on Twitter at OTH Sports Media, at the Dave Hooker. Follow Caleb Calhoun. What's your Twitter? I see it all the time, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
It's at my name. It's at Caleb Calhoun.
Yes. Follow
That's my
him.
X-name.
Yeah, follow him as well. Download the app. Do you like the app? Because we're checking that out. So download the app now, and don't forget to support our sponsors below. And check out the Celebrate 98 book, guys. I'm going to take care of you, and would love for you to order that. It makes great Christmas presents or holiday gifts, whatever the case may be. And so go ahead. And G. Smith, I agree with you. He is heavy. And it's not just processing. It's a little bit of both. So let me backtrack on that a little bit. But check out the Celebrate 98 book. We'd love for you to own that. And you can order it right below autographed copies. We've got a couple of autographed copies still available with Fred White. So he's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation